I've yet to decide whether this particular part of the video is going to go at the start or at the end. So, depending on where it goes, I could be saying, hello, welcome to the 2 or Less channel and this video on how to make these naval and air bases. Or I could be saying, and that's how it's all done. Well, I guess you're interested in learning how to make Axis and Allies Navy bases and airfields, and I am too. I made these already. As you can see, I haven't made any air bases, so I'm going to find out on the fly, as it were. So what we have here, these ones are already made, and they're made out of this stuff. I'll show you some more of that in a minute, but to give you an idea of what happens when they're made, they're all made from a single template, as you can see. Give you an idea of scale, I've got somewhere. This is one of the normal Axis and Allies regular cardboard ones, which are perfectly serviceable, but for that bit more rock and roll feel on the G40 game, this thing is about the same length. The template is about the same length as one of these, and a fraction longer. It's just the way I made them. There's also a square hole and a round hole, and you'll need these extra parts to super glue onto the bases when you've made them all. When you made them, they are a little bit rough and ready. I happily admit that, but they come to life when you start fettling them and making them look all pretty. Now, everything you see in front of you, all these ones have all been made from the same base unit. They all fit roughly, if my fingers will work today, into this template, just roughly. They're all the same. They can be left-handed or right-handed, depending on which way you got them. I've made sure so far I've got a mix of even numbers of both sides. I can't think of any reason why to or not to do that. However, you get small pieces of imperfections when you make them. And so on these bases, some of them, say for instance this one, if this will focus in, has a downward slope here. Because there was an imperfection up here. So I thought, well, I don't want the imperfection. There's no reason why you wouldn't have a slope on one of your navy ports. It's a slipway of some kind. You may be able to pick out, I've also rebaited that whole section down by a touch. Can we get the right angle and angle? It's the same with this one here, say. There's a corner that's completely missing, if that will focus in, just here. There was a bit of damage there, didn't like it. So each one gets made as per how your skills or the material wants to let you make them. You can't go too far wrong. However, when it comes to these circular tanks and square buildings that go on there, they're a rough representation of a fuel depot or a building that's with it alongside. They're all made from the same single template, and what I do is you use a little bit too much material on these additional sections, and then on, say, the square one, you just make sure you're pushing the material around to give yourself something that approximates a roof. You'll never get it anywhere near as nice as these done. This all happens in the fettling, but you get an idea of where you want to be, and depending on how much excess material you have, depends on what you can then make. This one here has a two-sided slopey roof. I've got a four-sided one with a flat roof, and this one I particularly like. It's got a big canopy hanging over it, if we can get that on the right angle. That I love. It's fantastic for me. With some excesses of barrels, I've got a 3-barrel store here, which is just a bit more fun. And they've also got decals on, which I made myself. They're pretty annoying on the sides to work with, but you get used to anything. The choice of whether you paint them or not, that's entirely up to you. I decided to leave mine completely white because I think that the shadows that are formed by the light, especially on this, say, with the double slopey roof, the shadows themselves will paint in the details much clearer than I could paint them by hand. So that's just how they're made from templates. I haven't made any airports. Now I'm thinking that we got a runway about the same length as the naval bases, and a small square piece here to put on a building. Now they didn't really have big airport towers back in the 1940s. They had more like a square building with a rail around the top, say, and a smaller hut on top of that for the aircraft controllers to be able to see what they're doing. I'm not entirely sure, but I can't do the full triangular. I don't think that would be appropriate anyway. I think it might just get in the way too much. So I'm learning on the fly here with these air bases. But that's what I'm going to try to do. These ones, as you can see, they're simple enough to make. You just need a piece of excess perspex, which came off of the sheet I used for my G40 game cover. Keeps it all nice and pretty underneath that and not scratched. But I think you can get spare perspex from anywhere, like an old picture frame or something like that would be fine to work with. Square needle file, that's really handy. Literally, I just gang drilled down here with a small drill and then filed it all out by eye. You haven't got to be too precise with it. This epoxy, 2-part epoxy putty resiny stuff, it can be machined, drilled, tapped, turned, filled, sawn, sandpapered, whatever. There are some specialist modelling stuff that you can get, which I think is called green stuff. I never tried that. And there are other versions of this that aren't super fine. This is slightly more expensive. It's about £5 a pop, I think, for this whole box. And you can make loads out of it. But £5 in anybody's money, well, it's cheap enough, isn't it? I mean, it's half a cheeseburger if you're American, or a Moosey's trotter if you're Canadian, I guess. So let me get going with some of this stuff first. And I will pick this up when I know where I am with making up one of these aircraft bases, and probably using the square for the building that goes on there too. Oh, before I go, last thing to say, in reach for it, is you also want some of these wet wipes. These are sensitive baby wet wipes for my sensitive baby hands. Reason being, have one of them on the go, ready to rock and roll, because you don't want to wash your hands down the sink with this stuff, because I made that mistake once, and all the little bits, even though you think you washed your hands thoroughly, they get into the sink and you get told off by your missus for leaving bits of, and they are heavily stuck on to the stainless steel sinks. So use wet wipes to wipe your hands, and then go and wash everything down when you're all finished. Just get this going, and I'll see you in a sec. Well, here we are going with this epoxy putty stuff. These are what comes in the box, a couple of these, and I can't say this enough to you about not getting it mucky in the sink, but when you use this stuff, use less than you think. Use less than you think. I don't know if this expands when you join it together, but you are using a piece from this block and a piece from that block, so you're going to get double what you thought in the first place. So I'm going to go really small with this, because this is just a demonstration rather than an actual sort of production run. So I'm going to cut off one small corner of that. That's all. It's the tiniest little piece. And from the other part of the putty, and again, I wouldn't be cutting off really much more than double that. I want to make some stuff. So again, I'm going to mimic the same size. It's pretty close. Wrap it up, stop the air from getting to it, put it back in the box in a mo. You're supposed to mix it together for several minutes. I think that means several minutes if you've got absolutely loads of it you're squeezing together. It shouldn't be that long for just a couple of little pieces. Way I found a good way of actually mixing it together, rather than trying to squeeze it together and roll it together, because you never know which bits are which being mixed, is to actually just press the things out quite small, quite thin, and then join them together, because then you know at least you're getting two surfaces of thin stuff, the different mixes going together. So we are getting, a mix of the epoxy, 2 parts, if you know what I mean. I know what I mean. So we've got different faces together. So if I give that a little half twist and then rejoin it, then we're going to be getting 1/2 against 1/2, and then just start folding it in. And it doesn't take too much work. It's supposed to stay, I think, mobile for about 7 or 8 minutes. It might say somewhere in the box if I was reading it. Yeah, it says need for several minutes. Becomes rock hard in 3 to 4 hours. Well, yeah. So that's plenty of time. But what I tried when I did an early one was this stuff gets a bit sticky on these templates. So I tried to use a bit of water on there, and I found that wasn't a very good idea. Whether my fingers got tired or what, I'm not sure, but it seemed as if the putty hardened up, bizarrely, because of the water in there, and then it took ages to dry, and then go off. It's hard to explain that it became harder to squeeze but longer to dry. But don't put water on there. As long as you've got one of your wet ones to hand, you'll be okay. So as you can see, those two small pieces have come together. It's like I've only got a small bit in my fingers, as you can see, but the template is only quite small. So what I found with the harbour pieces, again, is to use less than you think you're gonna need. That should be mixed plenty enough for me. This being thinner than the other ones, but we're going to find out. Now, believe me, it does look a bit when you first put them together, and it looks a little bit when you've pulled them out and they go dry. But it doesn't take very much work with a piece of sandpaper and with a needle file to make it look actually quite good in my head. So I'm getting the shape roughly for it, and I can see I've got way too much gum here. It's amazing how little you need. Surprises me every time. But I'm trying to keep it together so it all goes in one piece. I think in terms of time-wise, this isn't a very efficient thing to do. Let me just change my glasses over from my closely up ones. Try not to get me gum on my lenses. That would be really annoying. But I think it takes I think roughly half an hour to make each one. By the time you've finished mucking around with the putty and making a batch of them, because you should be making them in batches, I do. And then you've cleaned down, and then you started filing and fettling them to make that particular shape that you're after. I'd guess about half an hour to make each one, so it's not that efficient really in terms of time. But if you're looking at this video, I'm guessing, like me, you like pottering around with this sort of thing. I certainly do. So it's in there in that mould. I'm just sort of moving these edges in to closer to the edges of the templates as I can get, and it will now look a bit funny and a bit deformed as you press it out. Having your needle file to hand does actually help here. This is a little piece of non-stick paper. It's come from a backing sheet for some felt pads. Really handy. This stuff won't come off easily if you start getting it in the wrong places. So I've now eased it down a little bit. My glasses are falling off my nose. My nose is starting to run because it's hay fever season, but we're just pressing it down. We're just gently pressing it out here, and we'll see what sort of shape we get. But a lot of the work you can do afterwards with your needle file and with your sandpaper will dress it up nicely. Now it's just going to pop out now. Let it drop down to there. Now it looks like a bit of a splodge to you. The other side has got that shape. I'm hoping you can see it on camera. It's got the shape that you're after. It's a base line to work with. Now you can press it down just a fraction, and when you sand all this top away, it's fairly easy and quick to sand. You'll be left with somewhere close to that baseline shape that you're after. So the building is going to go onto there. Will be part of a square. So a piece of it's been knocked off. We can push that square into there, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to make this tall enough to give us that twin level effect with quite a good square bottom building and a small square hut on top. I've seen pictures on the interweb, so I've got an idea of where I want to be. Whether or not I get there is an entirely different matter. But once this is all done and put together, so I put all this done and fettled and filed and made into a shape that I'm happy with, you literally stick them on there with a piece of super glue. Super glue gel I use because it's a lot less runny and easier to work with. That's the second bit knocked out. So that will be eventually one air base. Okay, well I've just finished those that piece of putty up that I've made. It's managed to make 3 so far. So as you can see, it's taken me 15 minutes maybe to do all those. That's it. It's quite quick. It's quite easy. And as I say, if you cut off too much, you'll be working with too much, and you might get a bit fed up with working too much. And you don't want it to go off before you've finished that batch of material. So wet wipes to wipe it all down. So that small piece does 3. The other thing I was going to show you is just waffling at the moment. I'm trying to get this off my fingers. Is I had some spare stuff when I was making those naval yards, a little bit left over, and I decided, and I have this stuff here, wondering, this is actually a piece from I think it's an egg carton or something like that. It's got these serrations on it, and I wondered what would happen. And so I squidged some of this into here, and I used my nails to try and get myself something roughly square. And it turned out, when I finished it, where's my tweezers, you actually can make something with serrations. Are you going to focus for us? Either way around? Any way around? They are very, very sharp serrations. And literally, once it had dried in there, all I did was pop it off. And you've got a nice piece. Not sure what I'm going to use it for yet, having said that. But if that works for making serrations, and these work for making air bases and naval bases, I'm sure you've got a whole stack of stuff just tucked away that you start thinking, what could that be used for then? And you end up getting all silly and start making YouTube videos like me. Let me get these dried and I'll see you then. Okay, these parts have been drying for the last 24 hours or so. And I've had a chance to do some of the fettling on them, just to give you an idea of where we get to. This is obviously a complete blank one that hasn't done any fettling to it. That's how it came out of the mould, with a little bit of squishing down. You can see the fairly good straight line that you get, and you can see where this excess flash is there. Flash being a word in plastic injection moulding, if I remember rightly, for the extra bits. There you go. And on here, one that I've half sanded, literally just on a piece of sandpaper, rubbing backwards and forwards. If the surface below this is a bit spongy, you will then end up making it curved, because you'll be rocking backwards and forwards. So get it on a harder surface as you can when you rub it backwards and forwards, and keep double checking yourself as you go along. But we're half done here, and you can possibly see at the right angle where the bit of flash is up in there, where we haven't quite got into that area yet. But keep double checking. You may want to take the flash off entirely by rubbing the top edge, or you can just come in here with your needle file. You might be a little bit far away, but it's difficult to get a focus otherwise, and take the flash off that way around, or on your sandpaper. That's even faster, because this is more aggressive. Double check yourself a couple of times, and then you can use just edge of your needle file on a straight edge, just to make sure you know where you're creating a straight section. This one's got a hump in the middle, and you can double check yourself and file it down, and it will eventually end up with something that looks like this. It doesn't take that long to get to this position. I'm trying to find the right light for you as well with it. This is what I think is an air base kind of shape. Obviously the Navy bases are different shapes. With the buildings, we've got a blank that's come out here from all the squidging. As you can see, pretty rough and ready, but you've got a rough idea of where your square is, and the square is important to start with. That square, this is one I've half sanded, and you literally just with your needle file take the sides down and keep looking at where you're starting from. Use one as a datum point. The bottom, you want to get it square so the building sits upright, and then with the top, where I'm trying to make a rebate in this for a small building to go on top, I've been holding these in a set of tweezers, which has been helping me out immensely. And then you get your needle file and you angle it in. You go on the sort of a 30-degree angle, and you almost use that like a saw edge to get yourself a cut of a line, and then you turn your blade flatter to give yourself the beginnings of your rebate. This one's going to be quite tall, I think, as it ends up. The first one, which I finished off, is a lot lower of a rebate because of the amount of material that was there. And we have, can we see this somewhere? A little building on top of your balustrade going round the rest of your building. That's the telephone ringing. I'm going to ignore that. No, I'm not. And we're back from that very important introduction of a telephone call. It wasn't that important, I can promise you that. This is the building I was talking about, with the larger shape on the bottom, balustrade rail, and a small piece on top. I think you got the idea of how it was done. The things that I would do to finish this off now is I would put a little spot of super glue onto there, that base, and hold these in tweezers. They're much easier to work with if you've got them in tweezers and you've kind of preset your way of which orientation you want to put these down. And literally, same as with the docks or the naval yards, plonk them in place and leave them to set for just a couple of minutes. These round things are put on with super glue. They're put on with super glue. It goes off in seconds. You haven't really got to, you know how super glue works. However, make sure you haven't got any residue dust on these bases before you glue them, because they will actually, and I have had this on one of the early ones, had the building just fall away because the super glue doesn't go through the dust very well. So just make sure it's cleaned up before you go. The last things that I do, apart from like on these naval bases, I put some decals on. I don't know if you can quite see that on there. Is I will paint these with a matte acrylic varnish. I prefer matte varnish to gloss varnish when I'm painting my figures as well as these. I don't like shine in war. War isn't shine. That's just my own little thing. This will be the first one of the airport, so it's one down, possibly 29 to go. I'm not sure how many I'm going to make of these, but it will take me quite a long time to do them. I shall pot around and do them in downtime. Stick a movie on if I want to watch a movie or a documentary, more importantly, and take my leisurely time over it. I hope that's been instructive for you and inspiring for you as well. And if you have other designs which you think I can incorporate in them, drop me a little line in the messages on the comment sections down below, and I'll happily take a look at what you're doing and try to incorporate that into my own work, because between us we'll get something good going on. Last thing to say is that I make these videos in aid of a charity called the Cure Parkinson's Trust. You'll find a link to them down below this video, and one up in the header on the channel page. If you happen to have a spare IPC you can send to them, or a Navy base, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. Thank you very much for your time. I shall see you sometime in the future. Be cool.